Today we're going to open a very special book from the library, one that I rarely share with casual visitors. This book tells the story of how our young protagonist found this magical place. Make yourself comfortable in your armchair, dear reader, as the pages we are about to turn reveal both shadows and light. Once upon a time there was a boy named Theo. His eyes, the deepest hazel tone, carried a wisdom that no 10-year-old child should possess. It wasn't wisdom born from books or school lessons, but the kind that only pain can teach. Theo lived with his grandmother in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. His father had left when he was still crawling, leaving only emptiness and some faded photographs. His mother, she loved Theo with all the intensity her fragile heart allowed, but the disease consuming her body was stronger than her will to stay. When Theo turned 8, she turned a page that couldn't be rewritten, leaving him in his grandmother's care. School was a labyrinth of challenges for our young explorer. The other boys mocked his second-hand clothes and his contemplative silence. "Why do you never talk about your mother?" they would ask, with that cruel curiosity that only children can have. Theo learned to hide in the corners of the schoolyard during breaks, transforming himself into an almost invisible shadow. At home, things weren't much different. His grandmother loved him deeply. Her tired bones and failing eyesight made it difficult to demonstrate that love beyond the bare necessities. Bills piled up like dry leaves in autumn, and many nights Theo fell asleep listening to his grandmother crying softly in the kitchen, worried about a tomorrow that always seemed more threatening than today. Loneliness was Theo's first true companion. It followed him like a faithful shadow, present during silent school lunches, empty afternoons at home, and nights when he hugged his only remaining toy, a worn teddy bear his mother had given him. Sometimes life traps us in labyrinths full of challenges, but every adventure brings a lesson. You just need the courage to turn the page. It was on a particularly grey autumn afternoon that everything changed. The rain fell mercilessly, turning streets into furious rivers. Theo was running home after school, his sneakers soaked and his backpack protected under his thin coat. In his hurry to escape some 8th grade bullies, he turned down an unfamiliar street and found himself lost in a neighborhood he had never explored. That's when he saw it. An ancient building of dark stone with tall windows and a massive oak door carved with strange symbols. There was no sign indicating what this place was, just a small golden light shining through the nearest window, like a beacon calling to lost navigators. The rain intensified, and Theo, with no alternative, ran to the entrance of the mysterious building. His trembling hands pushed the heavy door, which opened with a creak that seemed to tell stories of centuries past. The aroma was the first thing that hit him. Old paper, tanned leather, polished wood, and something more. Something that smelled like cinnamon and infinite possibilities. "Welcome, young explorer," said a warm voice from somewhere among the endless shelves that extended in all directions. "I was wondering when you would find your way here." Theo blinked, adjusting his eyes to the soft light emanating from old lamps. Among the shadows, he distinguished the figure of a man sitting in a red leather armchair. It was impossible to tell if he was young or old. His eyes shone with the vivacity of youth, but his hands seemed to have turned enough pages to fill several lifetimes. Next to the armchair, a small carved wooden table held a steaming cup and a stack of peculiar-looking books. Where am I?" asked Theo, his voice almost a whisper, as raindrops trickled from his disheveled hair. "You are in the Library of Living Books, my young man," replied the man, rising with a fluid movement that seemed to defy the age suggested by the wrinkles on his face. "And I am the guardian of this place. Some call me the narrator, others the storyteller, but names matter little when you live among so many different stories." Theo looked around, amazed at the vastness of the place. The ceiling was so high it was lost in the shadows, and the shelves seemed to extend in all directions like an infinite labyrinth. Books of all sizes, colors, and shapes filled every available inch. Some seemed to pulse with their own light, others emitted soft sounds like whispers or distant melodies. I just wanted to shelter from the rain," explained Theo, suddenly aware that he was soaking the ornate carpet beneath his feet. "I didn't know what this place was. I'm lost. My grandmother must be worried about me." The guardian smiled, a smile that seemed to illuminate his entire face and warm the surrounding environment. "No one finds this library by accident, Theo. It reveals itself only to those who truly need it." "How do you know my name?" asked Theo, taking a step back. Distrust, his old friend, quickly taking the place of curiosity. "The books told me," replied the Guardian simply, gesturing to the shelves around them. "Each person is a story in progress, you know, and stories have a habit of introducing themselves to one another." "You're soaked and exhausted," observed the Guardian, noticing how Theo's shoulders drooped and how his eyes struggled to stay open. "Before anything else, we need to take care of you. Come with me." The Guardian led Theo through winding corridors between the shelves. As they walked, Theo noticed that the books seemed to murmur as they passed, as if commenting on the new visitor. Some pages even fluttered gently, though there was no breeze. "Are the books talking?" asked Theo, his voice a mixture of fear and fascination. "Books always talk, Theo," replied the Guardian without turning around. "Most people have simply forgotten how to listen to them." Finally, they reached a small door of lightwood, carved with what appeared to be constellations. The Guardian gently touched one of the carvings, and the door opened to reveal a cozy room. It was a circular room with walls covered by bookshelves from floor to ceiling. A canopy bed occupied the center, covered with a patchwork quilt that seemed to tell 1,000 different stories. A fireplace crackled cheerfully on one wall, and beside, there was an armchair and a small table, with a tray containing hot chocolate and cookies that looked freshly baked. "This is the resting room," explained the Guardian. "All tired travelers need a place to recover their strength before beginning a journey." "Journey?" asked Theo, confused as the Guardian guided him into the room. "I just want to go home. My grandmother will be worried." The Guardian nodded understandingly. "And you will return to her, Theo? But first, there's something you need to understand about this place." Theo accepted the soft towel the Guardian offered him and began to dry his soaked hair. The warmth of the fireplace was irresistible, and the aroma of hot chocolate made his stomach growl, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since the meager lunch in the school cafeteria. "Sit down," invited the Guardian, indicating the armchair. "Rest a bit, and I'll explain everything." As Theo drank the most delicious chocolate he had ever tasted, the Guardian sat on the edge of the bed and began to explain. "The Library of Living Books is not a commonplace, Theo. It exists in a space between worlds, a place where stories come to life and where time flows differently." "Like a magical place in fairy tales?" asked Theo, his eyes widening above the chocolate mug. "In a way," smiled the Guardian, "although I prefer to think of it as a place of infinite possibilities, more than of magic. Here, books don't just contain words and images. They contain entire worlds, experiences, lives. Each book is a door to somewhere, some knowledge, some transformation." Theo frowned, trying to understand. "How can a book be a door?" "In the same way that an idea can change a life," replied the Guardian, his eyes reflecting the flames of the fireplace. "Have you ever lost yourself in a story, Theo? Have you ever felt as if you were really there, living those moments alongside the characters?" Theo thought of the small collection of worn books he kept under his bed, stories of adventures and fantastic worlds that his mother used to read to him before bed, and that he now reread alone on nights when loneliness seemed heavier. "Yes," he admitted, "sometimes." "Well, here that feeling becomes literal. When you open one of the living books, you don't just read the story, you live it. You become part of it, and it becomes part of you." The Guardian paused, observing how Theo absorbed this information. Then he continued in a softer voice. "But there's something else you need to know, Theo. The storm that brought you here wasn't an ordinary storm. It was a storm that exists between worlds, and it brought you farther from home than you imagine." Theo felt a chill in his stomach that had nothing to do with the chocolate. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you can't simply walk out the front door and find your way back home. Not this time." Panic began to grow in Theo's chest. "But my grandmother, she'll be worried. She needs me. And you." "We'll return to her," assured the Guardian, his voice firm but gentle. "But to find the way back, you will first need to embark on a journey through the living books." The Guardian stood up and walked to one of the shelves, from which he took an ancient-looking book with a worn blue leather cover. "You see, Theo, the Library of Living Books chooses its visitors carefully. If you are here, it's because there is something you need to learn, something you need to find within yourself before you can return." "But I don't want to learn anything," protested Theo, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "I just want to go home." The Guardian nodded understandingly. "I understand your frustration, but sometimes the only way home is through a journey we never planned to make." He opened the blue book revealing pages that seemed to contain not words, but small windows to other worlds, moving images showing forests, oceans, strange cities, and fantastic creatures. To return home, you will need to be ready, explained the Guardian. It's not a matter of finding objects or completing tasks. It's about inner growth, about discovering truths that already exist within you, but that you still can't see. What kind of truths? Asked Theo, wiping his tears with his sleeve. If I told you they would lose their power, smiled the Guardian, but I can say they are related to what you need most at this moment in your life. And when you are truly ready, the path back to your grandmother and your home will naturally reveal itself. Theo looked at the open book, at the miniature worlds pulsing on its pages. Part of him wanted to throw the book away and demand another way to get home. But another part, a part he barely recognized, felt a strange attraction to those unknown worlds. How long will it take? He finally asked, his voice small. Time works differently here, replied the Guardian. When you return, you'll discover that much less time has passed in your world than you imagine. Your grandmother will hardly have noticed your absence. Theo didn't know if he believed this, but what else could he do? If this was really the only way to get back home, he had to try. What if I get lost in these living books? The Guardian smiled gently. You won't be alone on your journey, Theo. I will be watching, and when you need guidance, you'll find clues in the books themselves. Besides, the living books have their own wisdom. When you learn the true lesson, each story wants to teach, the book itself will bring you back to this room. Theo swallowed hard, his fingers nervously pinching the edge of his still damp shirt. And after I learn everything I need to, then you will be ready to find the return door, which will reveal itself when your heart knows it's time to go home. The Guardian closed the blue book and placed it on the small table beside the armchair. But all this can wait until tomorrow. Now, you need to rest. The journey through the living books requires strength and clarity of mind. Theo wanted to protest, wanted to start immediately so he could get back home as soon as possible, but his body betrayed his fatigue. His eyes were heavy and his limbs seemed made of lead. Your grandmother is fine, Theo, assured the Guardian, as if reading his thoughts. Trust me when I say that time flows differently here. Rest tonight, and tomorrow we will begin your journey home. The Guardian helped Theo settle into the soft bed, whose sheets smelled of lavender and new pages. Before leaving, he stopped at the door and turned to the boy. One last thing, Theo. The living books are not just stories. They are reflections of ourselves. What you will find in them will depend as much on what you bring into them as on what they contain. Remember that on your journey. With these enigmatic words, the Guardian left, gently closing the door behind him. Alone in the room, Theo looked at the blue book on the small table. Despite his fear and worry, he couldn't help but feel a small spark of curiosity. What worlds did those books contain? What adventures awaited him? And what truths would he need to discover to be ready to return home? With these questions dancing in his mind, Theo fell asleep, lulled by the soft crackling of the fireplace and the whisper of the books on the shelves, which seemed to tell stories to each other in the darkness. And so, dear readers, our young Theo fell asleep in the library of living books, on the verge of a journey that would change his life forever. A journey through worlds of knowledge, imagination, and discovery, with a single goal in mind: to find the way back to his grandmother and his home. Sometimes life traps us in labyrinths full of challenges, but every adventure brings a lesson. You just need the courage to turn the page. And you, my dear reader, what worlds would you explore if you had access to the living books? What lessons would you need to learn to find your own way? Perhaps if you look carefully, you'll discover that you are already living your own story, seeking your own keys. For in the end, it is not the pages of books that contain the greatest magic, but our ability to transform our experiences into wisdom. And that was today's curiosity, my dear readers. What will be the next mystery we explore together in the infinite shelves of this magical library? What adventures await our young Theo when he wakes up tomorrow, ready to begin his journey through the living books?